What's up, Reddit? Never thought I'd be the guy spilling my personal life on the internet, but here we are. Life's got a funny way of making you swallow your pride and put your story out there, because sometimes it's just too absurd to keep to yourself. So let me set the stage. I'm a 35-year-old guy, and my life has never been glamorous, never been flashy. I'm a construction worker. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. Fresh out of high school, when most of my classmates were packing up their dorm essentials and heading off to college, I was pulling on steel-toe boots, strapping on a tool belt, and walking onto job sites where the air smelled like sawdust, diesel fuel, and sweat. My work is honest. It's back-breaking, sometimes brutal. You start before sunrise, your hands numb from the cold or slick from the summer heat. You lift, hammer, haul, measure, and cut until the sun dips back down. And when you're done, you can step back, wipe the grime from your face, and look at something that didn't exist before you put in the work. A house, a shop, a stretch of road, a thing that will stand maybe for decades because you were there sweating your guts out. I take pride in that. Always have. Now, I don't have the kind of job that gets you likes on LinkedIn or makes people lean forward at cocktail parties. Nobody's rushing to hear about how I managed to fix a sagging foundation or install a truss system in 90-degree heat. People smile, nod, and move on to the guy who leverages cross-platform synergies or whatever. And I get it. I'm not shiny. I don't sit in climate-controlled offices drinking 7 lattes, and I don't send per my last email to people all day. But I'll tell you what, when a storm rolls through and you're safe under the roof I helped build, you'll be glad someone like me showed up that morning. That's me. Solid, steady, not trendy. Now let's talk about Jennifer. Jennifer, 30 years old, sharp dresser, smart talker, marketing professional. At least, I think her job was in marketing or PR, something in that grey zone where your entire job is to make things sound more important than they are. She lived in a world of deliverables, synergy, and touchpoints. The kind of stuff you say when you don't want anyone to notice that nothing actually got done. Don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking her intelligence. Jennifer is quick on her feet, socially smooth, and she could sell water to a drowning man if you gave her a PowerPoint deck and 30 minutes. She had this energy about her, this way of always being on. She'd walk into a room, and suddenly, everyone was a little more alert, a little more eager to impress her. That's part of what drew me in, I think. We met at a friend's barbecue, of all places. She was wearing this sundress, talking animatedly about some client project that meant absolutely nothing to me but seemed to light her up inside. And then she turned that energy on me, asking about my work, my hobbies, what I wanted in life. Most people glaze over when I talk about construction. Jennifer didn't. She leaned in. She made me feel like I was the most interesting guy in the world. We started dating, and for a while, it was magic. Opposites attract, right? She was the corporate climber, the social butterfly. I was the grounded, get your hands dirty kind of guy. She dragged me to networking mixes, and I drag her to tailgates. She laughed at my rough edges, and I admired her polish. After a year, I put a ring on her finger. I thought, yeah, this is it. We balance each other out. The first couple years of marriage were steady. Nothing wild, nothing broken. We found a rhythm. Shared dinners, me cooking most of the time, because Jennifer's idea of a meal was ordering salads through an app. Weekend errands, Sunday brunches, Netflix nights. Sometimes we'd take little trips, just the two of us, and for a while it felt like we were building something real. Now, I'm not going to sit here and lie. It wasn't some fairy tale romance. We didn't have the kind of passion that makes you throw plates and then make up on the kitchen floor. But it was comfortable, solid, safe, and for me, that was enough. See, I come from a background where stability is rare. My old man walked out when I was 12. My mum worked double shifts to keep us afloat, and I learned real quick that if you want something to last, you better put in the work yourself. That's how I treat relationships too. You show up, you put in effort, you stay. So with Jennifer, I thought I'd finally found someone who valued that same stability. She liked to joke that I was her rock, the dependable one, the guy who kept her grounded when her world spun too fast, and I wore that label proudly. But here's the thing about being someone's rock. People lean on you when they're tired, they rest against you when they're weary, but sometimes they start to crave wings instead of roots. At the time though, I didn't see that coming. To me, life was good. I didn't need fireworks, I didn't need drama. I just needed to come home to my wife, share a meal, maybe watch a little TV, and know that when the world got loud and messy, we had our little sanctuary. If I could go back, I'd freeze us in those days. The quiet dinners, the easy laughs, the sense that we were in sync. Because let me tell you, it didn't stay that way. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me paint you one more picture of who we were before everything cracked. It's a Saturday afternoon. I've been working overtime all week, and I finally have a day off. The house smells like fresh coffee. Jennifer is sitting at the kitchen table, her laptop open, tapping away on something work-related even though it's the weekend. She's got this focused look, brow furrowed, lip caught between her teeth. Every now and then, she'll mutter some phrase like brand identity or market share. None of it makes sense to me, but I like watching her work. She's in her element. I'm outside, tinkering with the grill, planning to make burgers. The dog's running around the yard. Jennifer comes out with 2 beers, hands me one, and for a moment, it feels perfect. Just us. Just normal. That's the memory I hold on to when I think about how we started. Because when it all fell apart later, the fights, the begging, the betrayals, I kept coming back to that moment, trying to understand how we went from 2 beers on a sunny afternoon to, you've destroyed everything we built. But that's for later chapters. For now, all you need to know is this. I was a simple guy who thought love was about showing up, about being steady. She was a woman with energy, charm, and ambition, who once told me I was the best thing that ever happened to her. And maybe, in that moment, she believed it. For a long time, I thought routine was the glue that kept us together. Wake up, coffee, work, dinner, Netflix, sleep, repeat. It sounds boring when you say it out loud, but when you're living it, that rhythm becomes comforting. Predictable. Safe. Jennifer used to say she liked that about me, that I was steady. She even compared me to a lighthouse once, always shining in the same place, no matter how rough the waters got. At the time, I thought it was the sweetest compliment anyone had ever given me. Now, looking back, I realize it was a warning I didn't know how to read. Because what she called steady, she eventually started calling boring. It didn't happen all at once. Nobody wakes up one day and decides their marriage is disposable. No, it's death by 1,000 cuts. Small shifts, barely noticeable changes that only make sense in hindsight. It started with her girls' nights. Jennifer had always liked spending time with her friends. Nothing wrong with that. I've got my buddies too. But after that Dallas trip, God, that trip was like a switch flipping her priorities shifted. Before Dallas, we'd have dinner together 5, maybe 6 nights a week. After, she started grabbing drinks with co-workers or catching up with Brittany. Always Brittany. Brittany, the self-proclaimed guru of freedom and self-love. The kind of woman who read half a blog post about polyamory once and decided she was an expert. She'd never held a stable relationship longer than 6 months, but somehow she was handing out marriage advice like she'd cracked the code. Jennifer came home from those nights out different. Sometimes she'd walk in glowing, practically buzzing, like she'd just discovered some hidden truth about the universe. She'd pour herself a glass of wine, flop onto the couch, and start rambling about how society traps us into roles or monogamy is a construct. Other nights, she'd come in with this sharp edge, snapping at me for no reason, criticizing little things, how I cooked the eggs, how I folded laundry. I'd sit there wondering, what happened out there that you're bringing back into our home? I tried to brush it off at first. People change. People go through phases. I figured she was just experimenting with new ideas, trying to spice up her social life. No big deal. But then the phone thing started. She'd never been secretive before. Her phone used to sit face up on the counter, buzzing with random group texts and work emails. Suddenly, it was glued to her hand. She'd be mid-conversation with me and then ping. Her eyes lit up. Her thumb flew across the screen, and I might as well have been talking to the wall. I'd ask, "Who's that?" She'd say, "Just Brittany." Always Brittany. At least, that's what she wanted me to believe. The weirdest part wasn't the texting itself though, it was the way she smiled at the screen. I'd catch her grinning, like actually grinning at whatever popped up. Not just a polite smile, but that private, goofy look you give when someone says exactly what you wanted to hear. That's when the distance started. We were still in the same house, still sharing the same bed, but it felt like she'd set up camp in some invisible world I couldn't enter. A world made of texts, late night talks with Brittany, and ideas that didn't include me. I tried to talk to her about it once. We were eating dinner, chicken, stir fry, I remember, and she was scrolling through her phone while absent-mindedly pushing rice around her plate. I said, "Hey, you've been distracted lately. Is everything okay?" She looked up, blinked, and gave me this smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just a lot on my mind." I asked, "Work stuff?" She shook her head. "No, just life." And that was it. Conversation over. I let it go. Because that's what I did back then. I let things go. I thought being a good husband meant giving her space, not pushing too hard. I thought if I just stayed steady, like that damn lighthouse she once loved, she'd find her way back on her own. I didn't realize I was watching the first crack spread across the foundation of our marriage. If you've ever watched someone you love slowly get pulled into another person's orbit, you'll know exactly how helpless I felt. One day you're the center of their world, and the next you're just background noise while some outsider whispers truths into their ear. For Jennifer, that outsider was Brittany. Now, let me explain Brittany. Because she's important in this whole mess. Brittany is the kind of woman who never grew out of her rebellious college phase. She's 32, but she talks like she's still 21 and discovering philosophy for the first time. She's loud, dramatic, and always chasing the next shiny idea that makes her feel smarter than everyone else. Her longest relationship? 6 months with a guy who taught yoga and lived out of a converted van. She called it soul expanding. He called it saving money on rent. They broke up after he ghosted her on a meditation retreat. That's Brittany in a nutshell. Reckless decisions dressed up as spiritual awakenings. She's the one who convinces her friends to dye their hair at 2 a.m. because life is short. She's the one who orders 3 bottles of champagne at brunch and says, "We deserve it." Even though she's living paycheck to paycheck. And she's definitely the one who thinks every problem in her life is because of societal expectations instead of, her own choices. For the longest time, Jennifer and Brittany weren't even that close. They were more like casual friends, grab a drink every few months type of thing. But then, suddenly, they were attached at the hip. Weekly dinners, late night phone calls, work events that just happened to include Brittany every single time. And with Brittany came the ideas. Jennifer started dropping little phrases into conversation that didn't sound like her at all. Things like, "Don't you ever feel like marriage is just a contract?" I read this article about how monogamy is actually unnatural. What if we're limiting ourselves by only having each other? At first, I thought she was just being philosophical. Testing out new thoughts the way people do after they read a weird blog post. But then it became a pattern. Every week, there was some new truth she wanted to debate, and it always traced back to Brittany. One night, I made the mistake of joking about it. Jennifer was going on about keeping options open while scrolling through her phone, and I said, "What? Is this another Brittany lecture?" The look she gave me, sharp, cold, almost offended, stopped me dead. "She's just trying to help me grow," Jennifer snapped. "Not everyone wants to stay stuck in the same mindset forever." That one stung. Because what she really meant was, you're the one who's stuck. I didn't argue. I told myself it was just a phase. Brittany would get bored, Jennifer would get tired of her constant chaos, and things would go back to normal. That's how it had always gone with Brittany and her big ideas. But this time, Jennifer was buying it. She started talking about personal freedom and self-discovery like they were items on a to-do list. She read books Brittany recommended. She joined online forums. She started saying things like, "It's not about you, it's about me figuring out who I am. If you solve in the node of the drime." And somewhere in there, I stopped recognizing my wife. She wasn't the woman who once told me I was her rock. She wasn't the woman who smiled at me across the kitchen table while eating takeout Chinese on a Friday night. She was restless, searching, almost like she was auditioning for a new life and I was just the placeholder until she landed it. It all came to a head one Tuesday night when she finally said the words that cracked everything wide open. "I think we should try an open relationship." She said it as casually as if she was suggesting we switch laundry detergent. And just like that, Brittany's ideas stopped being hypothetical. They became real. You know how some moments in life sear themselves into your memory so vividly that you can replay them in slow motion? Like a car crash, or the exact instant you realize you've lost something you'll never get back? For me, that moment was in my kitchen. Tuesday night. I was at the stove, scrambling eggs late dinner after a long day on the job. My shoulders ached, My boots were still by the door covered in drywall dust, and all I wanted was food, a shower, and maybe an hour of mindless TV before passing out. Jennifer was leaning against the counter, arms folded, just watching me. It wasn't unusual for her to hover in the kitchen, but this time her stare felt different, detached, like she was sizing me up, measuring whether I could handle what she was about to say. And then, so casually it almost didn't register, she dropped it. I think we should try an open relationship. I swear, for a second, I thought she was joking. I actually laughed right there with the spatula in my hand, eggs half scrambled because the idea sounded so absurd. This was Jennifer, the same woman who once told me that if I ever cheated on her, she'd leave me before I could even apologize. The same woman who rolled her eyes at friends who stayed with unfaithful partners. So yeah, I laughed. But Jennifer didn't. She just stood there, calm as ever, eyes steady, like she'd rehearsed this moment in the mirror. That's when my stomach dropped. I turned off the stove, leaned back against the counter, and asked, "Wait, are you serious right now?" She nodded. "Yes, I think it could be good for us. It's not a big deal. A lot of couples do it." She said it like she was suggesting we start meal prepping or buy matching pajamas, as if this wasn't a fundamental restructuring of our entire marriage. I just stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman I married with the stranger standing in front of me. The Jennifer the First knew used to talk about building a life together. She used to say things like, "You're my forever person." Now, suddenly, she wanted to schedule infidelity like it was couples yoga. So I asked, "Where is this coming from?" She gave me a shrug. One of those casual, nonchalant shrugs that's supposed to make something massive seem small. This is just how I feel right now. I've been reading about it. Brittany's in one. She says it changed her life. And there it was. The Brittany effect. Fully realized. The same Brittany who once said monogamy was a systemic tool. The same Brittany whose love life was basically a graveyard of bad decisions. That Brittany had now convinced my wife that opening our marriage was the path to enlightenment. I couldn't believe it. I told her flat out, "This isn't us. This isn't what we agreed on when we got married." She countered with, "But why not? It doesn't mean I don't love you. It just means I don't want to be confined. I don't want our relationship to be a cage." A cage. That's what she called our marriage. The life we'd built together. The vows we exchanged. The home we shared. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and twisted. I asked, "So what? You just want permission to sleep with other people?" She frowned at me like I was the one being unreasonable. "It's not just about sex. It's about freedom, exploration, growth." But come on, let's be real. When someone asks for an open relationship, what they really mean is, "I already have someone in mind." I didn't say that out loud, not yet, but the thought burned in the back of my mind. I wish I could tell you I stormed out, slammed the door, made some grand speech about loyalty and respect, but I didn't. I just stood there, spatula still in my hand, eggs going cold, feeling like the ground beneath me had cracked wide open, because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a declaration. Jennifer had already crossed the line in her head, maybe even in reality, and our marriage, the one I thought was built on steady foundations, had just been handed its eviction notice. See, once someone plants the seed of open marriage, it doesn't just sit quietly in the soil, it grows fast. And in Jennifer's case, it grew into a full-blown affair before I could even process what she'd asked for. It started with subtle signs. She became glued to her phone, but this time, it wasn't just Brittany lighting up her screen. She'd smile, no, beam when certain texts came in. The kind of smile that used to be reserved for me when I sent her something sweet or stupid during the day. Now it was directed at some glowing rectangle she kept tilted away from me. She started dressing differently, too. Jennifer had always been stylish, polished, professional, put together, but now she was adding a little more flash. Tighter skirts, higher heels, extra time on her makeup before work events. I'd catch her checking herself in the mirror like a teenager before prom, practicing smiles that weren't meant for me. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things, that maybe this was just her way of spicing up her life, of feeling confident, but then she slipped. One Friday night, she came home later than usual. I was on the couch, half asleep, when she stumbled through the door, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. She kicked off her heels, tossed her purse on the counter, and flopped onto the couch beside me. Her perfume hit me like a wave. Not the usual faint scent from the morning. This was fresh, strong, like she'd reapplied it hours into the night for someone else's benefit. I asked, "Where were you?" She giggled, actually giggled, and said, "Out. Just out." Her phone buzzed. She snatched it up so fast you'd think it was about to explode. The screen lit up just long enough for me to catch a name before she angled it away. Ryan. And not just Ryan. Ryan, CEO of some tech company. Suddenly, it all clicked. This wasn't about exploration or growth or whatever flowery nonsense she'd fed me in the kitchen that night. This was about him, the flashy CEO, the guy with money, status, and charm. She didn't want an open marriage. She wanted him. Over the next few weeks, it became undeniable. She was always working late, always networking, always coming home with that same perfume cloud around her, that same glow in her cheeks, that same secret smile when her phone buzzed. I'd ask questions calmly at first, then sharper, but she always had answers ready. "Don't you trust me?" she'd say, tilting her head like I was the crazy one. "This is what we talked about, remember? Being open. You agreed to this." Except I hadn't. Not really. I hadn't agreed to watch my wife fall head over heels for another man while treating me like the consolation prize. The worst part? She seemed happy, happier than she'd been in months, maybe years. She'd hum while cooking, dance around the living room when she thought I wasn't looking, text with that lovesick glow until midnight, and all I could think was, that used to be me. But the high didn't last, because affairs built on fantasies rarely survive the weight of reality. One night, I heard her crying in the bathroom. Quiet, muffled sobs she thought I couldn't hear. I knocked. She didn't answer. Later, she crawled into bed, her face puffy, her phone clutched in her hand. The next morning, she was pale, withdrawn, eyes red from no sleep. She finally admitted it. Ryan had ghosted her. The CEO who had swept her off her feet, who had made her feel shiny and special, had moved on without so much as a goodbye. One minute she was his thrilling escape, the next she was just another experience in his highlight reel. Jennifer tried to play it off, but I could see it, the heartbreak, the humiliation. She had gambled our marriage for a man who didn't even care enough to send a breakup text. And that's when the begging began. But that's chapter 6. If you've ever watched someone's world collapse in slow motion, you'll know exactly what I saw happen to Jennifer after the CEO disappeared. It didn't happen all at once. It was little things at first, the constant checking of her phone, screen lighting up, then dimming again when no message came, the way she'd linger on LinkedIn, scrolling through Ryan's profile like a junkie looking for a fix, the muttered "why" under her breath when she thought I wasn't listening. Jennifer had been walking on clouds for weeks, and now, overnight, it was like gravity yanked her down and slammed her into the pavement. I didn't feel joy at seeing her hurt. You might think I did. She'd betrayed me, humiliated me, risked our marriage for some flashy fantasy. But sitting across from her at the dinner table, watching her push food around her plate with vacant eyes, all I felt was a mix of anger and pity. And maybe a little validation, because now she knew what it felt like to be discarded, to be treated as an option, not a priority. One night, about a week after Ryan stopped answering, Jennifer broke. She crawled into bed beside me, something she hadn't done in weeks. She was trembling, her face streaked with tears, her voice barely a whisper. "Please," she said, "I need you." I froze. This was the same woman who had begged me for an open marriage, the same woman who had laughed off my suspicions, who had accused me of being insecure, who had glowed brighter for another man than she had for me in years. And now, because her shiny toy had ghosted her, she wanted me back. I didn't move. I didn't hold her. I just asked one question. "Why now?" She sobbed harder, clinging to my arm. "Because I made a mistake. I see that now. He didn't care about me. He never did. I was stupid. I let Brittany get in my head. I thought I was missing out on something. But the whole time, I had what I needed. You, us, please. Let's fix this." Her words should have meant something. Months earlier, I would have killed to hear her say them. But now, they felt hollow. Because I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unsee the way she lit up when Ryan's name popped on her phone. I couldn't unhear her giggles when she stumbled through the door smelling of his cologne. I couldn't forget that she had been willing to throw me away the second a better option appeared. I told her, "You don't get to come back just because he left." The look on her face, it was like I'd slapped her. "But I love you," she insisted, voice breaking. "It was always you. I was just confused." Confused. That was her word. Like, confusion was a hall pass for betrayal. The next few weeks were torture. She tried everything, cooking my favorite meals, suggesting date nights, initiating intimacy again, but it all felt like damage control, not love. Like she was auditioning for forgiveness, not actually earning it. And every time I looked at her, I remembered. The truth was, Jennifer wasn't grieving me. She was grieving him, the CEO, the fantasy life she thought she was stepping into, the world where she was the shiny new plaything of a powerful man. I was just the safety net she'd fallen back into. And once you see yourself as someone's safety net, you can never go back to being their partner. That was the night I realized something brutal. Our marriage wasn't dying anymore, it was already dead. But admitting that out loud? That would come in chapter 7. There's a difference between cracks in a marriage and the point where the whole foundation collapses. For months, Jennifer and I lived in a weird purgatory. She tried to act like everything could just go back to normal, while I carried the weight of everything I'd learned, everything I'd seen, everything I'd felt. It was like she was trying to patch bullet holes with band-aids. And I let it ride for a while, not because I thought we could recover, but because I wanted to see if there was anything left to salvage. Some days, she seemed like the old Jennifer. Other days, she was clearly just pretending, and I hated her for it. The tension got heavier by the day. Conversations turned short. I stopped sharing my thoughts with her. I started sleeping on the edge of the bed, my back turned. It wasn't yelling or fighting. It was worse than that. It was silence. The silence of something already over. The straw didn't come in the form of a screaming match. It didn't come from catching her sneaking out again. It came on a random Tuesday night. I'd just gotten home late from a site job. My hands were caked in drywall dust, my shirt stiff with sweat. I walk in, drop my boots by the door, and what do I see? Jennifer, sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone, smiling. At first, I thought maybe she was watching TikToks, but when she noticed me, she quickly tilted the phone away, like a teenager caught texting in class. I didn't say a word. I just went upstairs, washed off, and came back down. Dinner was ready, something fancy she'd cooked, like she was auditioning for forgiveness again. We ate mostly in silence until she said, "You've been so distant. I need you to let me prove I can make this right." I looked at her, really looked at her, and in that moment, I realized there was nothing she could ever do that would erase the image of her glowing for another man. So, I said it. "It's over." Her fork clattered against the plate. "What?" "You heard me. We're done. You wanted an open marriage. You wanted other men. You got them. And now you want to crawl back because you got burned. That's not how this works." "I can't unsee it, Jennifer. I won't." Her face went pale. Tears welled instantly, but this time I didn't soften. She begged, she pleaded, she tried to twist it, said I was being unforgiving, that I was letting pride destroy us. But pride wasn't the issue, respect was. And she'd shattered it. Then came the real final straw. Through her sobs, she said, "You're just mad because he was better than you." That was it. That was the dagger. In that moment, every ounce of pity I had left for her evaporated. Because even in begging for me back, she couldn't resist cutting me down. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked out. No yelling, no slamming doors, just finality. And as I sat in my truck, gripping the wheel with white knuckles, I knew it was truly over. Not just in my head, not just in theory, but in reality. Our marriage wasn't just broken. It was gone. What I didn't know then was that fate had one last twist lined up, because the person I'd end up with was someone Jennifer never would have expected, her best friend, Evelyn. But that's a story for chapter 8. If you've ever been through the kind of breakup that feels like someone ripped the floor out from under you, you'll know what I mean when I say I was running on fumes. After leaving Jennifer that night, I didn't go to a buddy's place, or a hotel, or even my parents' house. I just drove. Miles and miles with no destination. The only thing louder than my engine was the storm in my head. How did I go from a steady, predictable marriage to this mess? From weekend grocery runs and Netflix binges to finding out my wife had traded me in for boardroom fantasies. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Evelyn. Now, I hadn't really thought about Evelyn much during this whole disaster. Sure, she'd been on the Dallas trip, but she'd always been different from the others. She wasn't the type to egg Jennifer on. In fact, she'd once pulled me aside at a barbecue and whispered, "Don't let Brittany talk her into doing something stupid." I never forgot that. Her text was simple. "Heard you left. Are you okay?" I stared at it for a long time. Technically, I wasn't okay, but admitting that out loud felt like defeat. Still, my fingers typed before my brain caught up. Not really. She called immediately. Her voice was soft but steady, the kind of tone people use when they know you're hanging on by threads. "Where are you?" I told her I didn't know. Somewhere between lost and nowhere. She laughed gently, not at me, but with me, like she understood exactly what I meant. Then she said, "Come over." I don't know why I did. Maybe because she felt like the only safe voice in the middle of all the chaos. Maybe because I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts anymore. Or maybe because deep down, I knew Evelyn had always seen through Jennifer's games in ways I never had. When I pulled up outside her place, she was already standing on the porch in sweats and a hoodie, hair tied back. No makeup, no pretenses, just real. She didn't bombard me with questions, didn't ask for the details. She just opened her arms and I walked into them. That hug, I didn't realize how badly I needed it until I was in it. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was grounding, someone saying, "You're not alone in this." We sat in her living room, drinking tea. She let me spill everything, the eggs in the kitchen, the CEO, the open marriage pitch, the final insult that had pushed me out the door. She didn't interrupt, she didn't judge. She just listened. When I was done, she shook her head, slowly. I warned her. I told her she was throwing away something real for something fake, but she doesn't listen to anyone when she's got an idea in her head. Is mine to vary? There was no smugness in her voice. No, I told you so. Just sadness. Like she really cared about what I'd gone through. Somewhere between midnight and sunrise, something shifted. We weren't just friends anymore. There was a different kind of current running between us, something I hadn't felt in years. Not forced, not performative, not a shiny distraction like Jennifer's CEO fling. Real. When she touched my hand across the couch, it wasn't calculated. It wasn't lust. It was comfort. And for the first time since my life had blown up, I felt peace. I didn't sleep with Evelyn that night. We just sat there until exhaustion finally pulled me under. I woke up with a blanket draped over me and her curled up in the armchair, keeping watch like she didn't trust the world to leave me alone. And that was the beginning of something Jennifer never could have predicted. The woman she called her ride or die was about to become the one person who truly showed me what loyalty looked like. But if you think that came without complications, buckle up, because chapter 9 is where things got messy. The morning after that first night at Evelyn's, I should have felt awkward. By all logical measures, it was a strange situation. Me, fresh out of my marriage, sitting in my wife's best friend's living room like I belonged there. But I didn't feel awkward. I felt calm. For the first time in months, I'd slept without tossing and turning. No nightmares about Jennifer's smile lighting up for someone else. No endless replay of that last conversation. Just rest. When I woke up, the smell of coffee filled the air. Evelyn was in the kitchen, hair still messy, humming to herself as she poured 2 mugs. When she saw me, she smiled. Not a forced smile, not pity, but the kind of smile you give someone when you're just glad they exist. "You look like you actually slept," she said, handing me a cup. I did, I admitted, and it felt like a confession. We sat at her small kitchen table, sipping coffee in silence. Not the heavy silence I'd lived with Jennifer, but the comfortable kind where words weren't necessary. That's when I realized we were teetering on an invisible line. For weeks, maybe months, Evelyn had been the one steady presence in the chaos. She'd seen Jennifer spiral from the inside, and now she was watching me try to climb out of it. She'd always been kind, but now there was something else in her eyes, something that scared me as much as it drew me in, affection, and maybe something more. I tried to push it down. She was Jennifer's best friend. This was messy, complicated, borderline betrayal in its own way. If people found out, it would look like I'd been scheming behind Jennifer's back, waiting for her marriage to implode so I could swoop in. That wasn't the truth, but perception doesn't care about truth. Evelyn must have felt the same, because as the hours passed, I caught her looking at me and then quickly looking away. Her hands fidgeted when they weren't holding her mug. Her words started catching in her throat. By mid-afternoon, It was unbearable. I was on the couch, scrolling my phone aimlessly, when she sat down beside me, not across from me, not at the other end, right next to me. She didn't speak at first. She just stared at her hands in her lap, twisting them together. Finally, she whispered, "You know she doesn't deserve you, right?" The words hit me harder than I expected. Everyone else I'd talked to about Jennifer had given me platitudes. She made a mistake, give it time. Or, these things happen in marriages. Evelyn was the first person to say it plainly. Jennifer didn't deserve me. I looked at her, really looked. The way her shoulders curved toward me, the way her eyes shimmered but didn't quite cry, the way she seemed to be holding back something she was terrified to let out. That's when the line broke. I didn't plan it. I didn't weigh the consequences. I just leaned in and kissed her. For half a second, she froze. Then she kissed me back, like she'd been waiting for that moment longer than I knew. It wasn't a desperate kiss. It wasn't about filling the hole Jennifer had left. It was slow, steady, careful. Like we both knew how dangerous it was, but we couldn't stop ourselves anyway. When we finally pulled back, we just sat there, breathing. Neither of us said anything. The silence was deafening, not awkward, not comfortable, but charged. She whispered, "This is wrong." And I said, "I know," but neither of us moved away. By the end of that night, we'd crossed more than just an emotional line, and while part of me felt guilty, another part, the bigger part, felt alive for the first time in years. Because this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about filling space. It was about finding something real in the ashes of something fake. But if you think Jennifer was going to just sit quietly while this unfolded, you don't know her. Because chapter 10 is where everything blew wide open. If I thought the worst was behind me after leaving Jennifer, I was dead wrong. Because nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the fallout when she discovered I was seeing Evelyn. It didn't happen right away. For a couple of weeks, Evelyn and I lived in this strange bubble. Not quite public, not quite secret. We weren't plastering selfies online or announcing ourselves at Sunday brunch, but we also weren't hiding in shame. We went grocery shopping together. We cooked dinner side by side. We laughed until midnight, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. But Jennifer wasn't gone. She lingered like smoke in the air, after a fire everywhere. Even when I didn't want her to be, she called. A lot. Left voicemails I didn't answer. Texts that went from pleading, "Please, can we talk?" to angry, "You're throwing everything away," to desperate, "I can't live without you." I ignored them all, until the night she showed up at my door. I wasn't even at Evelyn's. I was at my place, packing up some things I'd left behind. It was late, and I was dead tired. Suddenly, there's this pounding on the door like the police are about to raid me. When I opened it, Jennifer was standing there, mascara streaked, hair wild, holding her phone like a weapon. "You son of a b," she spat, shoving the screen in my face. And there it was. A photo. Grainy, but clear enough. Me and Evelyn walking into a coffee shop, our hands brushing. Someone had snapped it, probably one of Jennifer's friends, and sent it straight to her. My stomach dropped. "How could you?" she screamed. "With her? Her? My best friend?" I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to defend it, explain that Evelyn had been there when Jennifer wasn't, that she had listened, that she had cared, but the other part of me knew nothing I said would matter. Jennifer wasn't looking for understanding. She was looking for blood. "You ruined us," she yelled, tears flying. "You threw away our marriage for this." For her, that was rich. Coming from the woman who'd begged for an open marriage, who had ditched me for a CEO like I was yesterday's lunch, I finally said, calm as I could, "No, Jennifer, you ruined us. Evelyn just picked me up when you dropped me." That broke her. She collapsed against the wall, sobbing, muttering curses, apologies, accusations all jumbled together. Then she switched gears. "She's not your friend. She's using you. She doesn't care about you. She just wants to hurt me." I shook my head. "Evelyn's done more for me in a few weeks than you did in years. Don't twist this into her fault." Jennifer's face hardened. "Then you've made your choice." And just like that, the pleading stopped. The tears dried. Her eyes turned cold. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Both of you." Then she stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I stood there in the silence afterward, adrenaline buzzing through my veins. It should have felt like victory. Like I'd finally told her off, drawn the line, reclaimed my life, but instead, all I felt was the weight of what was coming. Because if there's one thing I knew about Jennifer, it's that she didn't lose gracefully. And in that moment, I realized the real battle wasn't the cheating or the open marriage or the ghosting. The real battle was surviving what Jennifer was about to do next. But that's another story.